Pod. This is going to be so fun for me. Hi, I'm Amy Porter, and this is my podcast. My mission is to show people how to empower themselves through music, business, and media. I try to see as clearly as possible how I can help. I showcase the music that I've played and the people I've met along the way. I'm a wife and a stepmom. You might know me as a professor, a performer, a producer, a publisher, a recording artist. I'm the founder of a couple of nonprofits. Welcome in to my PorterFlute Pod.
Welcome to PorterFlute Pod. I'm so happy you're here.
Adam Eccleston, welcome to PorterFlute Pod.
I'm so happy to be here.
We have our nerd glasses on.
100%.
But I can't see you with these glasses on.
I know. I have a little glare too on mine, so I'm going to have this.
So do you have prescription glasses?
No, I had pretty good eyesight. These are for blue light. I get headaches because, now most of my playing is on iPad. So I get some headaches, so I'll wear that. Now, my eyesight is pretty good, but don't ask me for directions. Just don't do that. We all have our weaknesses,
I tend to attract people that have a lack of sense of direction, and I'm always pointing them in the right direction in every sense. Okay, so you were my student at ARIA?
Yes.
Like 100 years ago? Like
113 years ago.
Oh my God.
And since I was in Boston and you were coming to the Boston greater area, I was like, this was my opportunity because I wanted to work with you. And I've known so much about you for a long time. So there were some other amazing flute players that year, but you were the reason why I wanted to go that year.
Oh, thanks. I hope you didn't cry.
No. I grew up in Germany, and my dad is military. So I grew up in a very
You're Brooklyn.
tight-knit.
You're also
And
Brooklyn.
I'm Brooklyn. So I definitely have a tough skin, for sure. But I learned a lot from you.
Thank you.
I'm glad we brought this up. I learned a lot from you. You actually signed your CD, and you put on it, "Continue to Shine." And I had that CD forever, just with your signature on it and your message to me. So that was one of the things that helped propel me forward. And because this is a hard industry, and going to NEC, it was amazing, but it was highly competitive. And trying to figure where my place is in this industry at the tender age of 20, 21, whatever I was. So to get validation from you meant a lot to me. So
you are disarmingly charming. And that in itself lends itself to a profession of service and trustworthiness. People can trust you if you smile. We learned that on this podcast.
Sure.
It's important that your message is authentic, which you've covered in other podcasts. Just to start, I want to tell you, I loved your recital at the Flute Center of New York on the homage to Harold Jones.
Thank
Colors, which you said Paula helped you with. I think that the selections, everybody needs to sit up and take notice of what a great pastiche you made between, the French Baroque, and then you had just composers we'd never heard of, composers that were underrepresented, and part of your background, So I love it that you created this recital for yourself.
I've been in contact with Mr. Jones's family and his sons, and I've done a couple of recitals celebrating Mr. Jones. Really what was the catalyst for that was the death of some really powerful people who would have been powerful people who weren't. And I wanted to learn more about who came before me in the classical world, the classical flute world, Black people. Who came before me and what kind of propelled them forward in their careers. So when I came across Harold Jones, I'd known of him for a long time. And I was asked to do a recording for the radio station. And I chose to do a sonata that was written for him. So I kind of got a chance to reconnect my memories with him with this album. And for me, I was thinking about when I did the New York Flute Club competition years ago. And I said, I spoke to him and I was like, this is a really tough field. Do you have any advice for me? All that bits. And, he just really made me feel whole. Because there just aren't a lot of, Black musicians. There just aren't a whole lot. So it was amazing for me to kind of connect with him. So years later, when the project came about, I said, I want to honor him. And I want to do it more than just a one-time thing. So I said, I want to do some recitals. Eventually, I want to do a scholarship fund. Eventually, I want to do different things because what he has done, a lot of people haven't done today. It still can't do today.
Well, encapsulate very quickly, Harold Jones, what Mr. Jones meant to you, what he was, who he was.
Yeah, what Harold Jones meant to me was a bright light at the end of a tunnel that is dark and unknown.
Born in 1934 and he died in 2015. Ooh. And he was the New York Flute Club president from 1976 to 1979. So he was a leading New York flute player and he left a legacy.
He did 100%. And what I was noticing was that I was talking to people at the NFA last year and years before when I attended, and I asked them about him, and people didn't know who he was. So I said, I don't want his legacy to die out. So I want to make sure that I can do whatever I can to help his legacy continue.
Thank you.
In the best way that I can.
Thank you. And you are doing for others what he's done for you.
Bingo.
Well,
Bingo.
It's one of the reasons why you're on PorterFlute Pod is to inspire others. Let's talk about hating your voice. In the 70s and 80s, all we had was basically our car radio. We had AM and FM, and we were not putting earbuds in. And so when we played it back, we would, hit a button and we'd hear back our voice, which was all tinny and all highs, and it was just really awful. And then I'll never forget the first breakdown I had at hearing my flute sound on a recording. Oh my gosh, I was horrible. I thought I was all that. It was a Mozart flute quartet in D major, and I was just recording my part. I went back and listened, and it was nothing like I thought it was. Playback is evil, Adam. Let's talk about hating your voice, but then, moving through it and understanding that it's your voice, it's your life, and it's your job to share your message, and your voice is your voice, and some people don't mind it. So you said you hated your voice. I heard you in an interview say, I hated my voice, and I didn't listen to my first episode for a long time, and I thought, oh my God, how could you not do that?
I get it. For me, it's deep-rooted. I do some work in different schools talking about bullying and how that can have a huge effect on your life into your adulthood. And for me, I was made fun of. I was teased in school because the way I talked, the way I sounded, because I didn't talk like the other kids. I didn't sound super masculine, and I wasn't hood enough in some ways, and in other ways, I wasn't masculine enough. And in other ways, people just thought my voice was too weak. It was just too weak. So I never liked it. Also, I've suffered from allergies since I was a kid, so I was always very nasally sounding, and I just hated it. So I just grew up not liking my voice at all. I couldn't listen to anything that I did with that had to pertain to my voice. And then years later, I was the artist in residence for All Classical Radio, for the radio station that I work for now. And I've done some interviews with them when I was in residence with them for 2 years. And the president and CEO, Suzanne Nance, set up a meeting with me and said, we have an amazing voice. That was the first time I've heard someone ever say that to me. So your voice is perfect for the radio. Do you want a job? Do you want to be a host? And I said, well, I don't know exactly what that means, but that pertains to what all that pertains to. But I said, I would be interested in pursuing that. So I did. And when I did my first episode, I was scared. But then here's what propelled me forward, was that I realized that my voice makes people feel confident. My voice makes people feel comfortable. My voice makes people open up to me. My voice makes people attracted to me, want to know more about me, want to know more about what I'm talking about. So I said, my voice actually has power. I was just taught from an early age by people who knew I had power, but wanted to weaken me. They wanted to weaken me. So they wanted to dampen my shine.
I feel like the people that wanted you to fail were trying to dampen your shine. I hope your family was supporting you.
They were.
Yeah.
They were 100%.
I always say on PorterFlute Pod, love your haters.
You're right.
So making records is the key to starting. It's also super humbling because you're going to hear back, I cracked a note, or I've learned the wrong note this entire time. And somebody said, yeah, that's an F sharp. I mean, it's so transparent, this recording industry, this recording artistry, that people ask me all the time, do you practice to audition and then perform differently? And I go, yeah, because in the audition, they're going to want this. And then in the concert, they're going to want this. But then in the recording, you better know how to sit there and play that thing with the orchestra and not jingle the buttons on your shirt, or sit there and not breathe, or not hit your flute on something. Recording is so hyper aware. So making records is quite a big deal to me. I love it. Like that adrenaline rush, there it is for me. More so than on the concert stage. What do you think about making records? Because you made one.
Yeah, I made one, and then I have working with 2 others.
Yeah.
And honestly, for me, it's the breathing. The breathing can become so audible. And if I'm trying to, really focus on a long phrase, or really trying to I know no one else could do this, so I gotta push it. I gotta do it into the full 4-bar phrase. So you can take this huge breath in the beginning of it, but it can be so loud. So I've been working on making sure that my breath is more silent, and also my articulation. And when you're talking about playing back and listening back to it, the articulation just sounds too tonguey. So I've had to work on how do I tongue in a precise way that sounds pristine on the recording. Because what I think I'm practicing, that's pristine, it is not coming through.
That and accents.
Exactly.
I always get, Amy, could you do more on the accents?
You know what? People have to remember too. I mean, I know a lot of young folks, they want to make recordings, want to do these things. And I think it's fabulous, I think it's wonderful. But it is, like you said, it's so anxiety ridden. The hardest part for me was when the producers and the folks who are in charge of the recording studio are there with the score as you're recording.
Oh, I actually like that, because then they've got your back. Did I do that right? Is there a crescendo? I've had 0 people in the booth. Literally.
I do hear that.
Oh my God. So let me tell you a little trivia. Oh, this is bad, but I feel it coming out. Car Gaylor, remember I stood in front of a camera and I played all 30 caprices. And one of them...
I'm bowing down. I am bowing down.
There was no one there. There was no one there. Dave Shaw, I think he went off and had a cigarette half the time. So I'm just in that hall, and then he's in the hallway, because back in the day, there was. So I'm recording Cargaler, and one of them took, I think number 19, I don't know, took 22 takes because I refused to cut. I did not splice. I wanted for video to show everybody you can stand there and do it from the first measure to the last measure without stopping and splicing. Mm-hmm.
That's why you are the GOAT.
And
You
then
are the greatest of all time.
no, this
Seriously.
is okay. I'll tell a disarming story then.
Okay.
So I said I finished a take. I made a face and I said, Dave, did you hear me fart?
What
And
do you say?
there was dead silence because he had his finger just hovering over the button to turn me off, but he didn't. And he has that as an outtake. Now, apparently not. He did not hear me fart, but I thought.
I hope it was in rhythm.
I don't know which one it was. Goodness. Oh, goodness. That's like a deep dive story that only he tells. I've never told it myself, but I found it necessary. Yeah. So that was the first time I ever stood up and just did it, and had practiced it for 7 years. Now, another piece of trivia is that no one ever taught me the Cargaler caprices. I taught them to myself, and I'd find people who spoke German and say, "Could you tell me what this means?" You know,
Yeah, because it was a
like
lot of
really
words.
means, because German is deeper than English. Sorry. You know.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
And it is. So that's kind of my first DVD thing. It was a DVD, and now we just put it out there. I think also me not having the money to spend on a pianist made me do Passacaglia, the solo flute CD, because I didn't have. I'll just stand there alone in a hall and record stuff. Would you recommend that too? Just find solo flute music and stand there and record yourself?
What I've learned over the past, I would say 8 years or so, is that there is money out there to fund these type of things. You got to find it. You got to find people who can support you. You might not be able to get it straight from whoever you're signed with, or if you're like myself, a Powell artist, maybe they can supply some part of it, but you got to find people who's in your village who can really come together and help you fund these things, because they're not cheap. It is not cheap to put together an album and all the different parts that come with it. It is a lot. And I learned that through the radio station, that all the different parts that come with it. It's incredible, but there are funding out there. So I don't want to push any, I don't want anyone to feel that they can't do these things or that they shouldn't do because they don't have the money. There is funding out there. It's not easy, but there is funding out there. But if you can do a solo album, go for it. It is significantly cheaper. People ask me, did I do this? Did I study this? Because also conduct too. Did you study conducting? Do you have a second master's degree or a third master's degree in conducting? I didn't take any of that. For me, I learned from watching. My father has always taught me, observe, watch people who are doing things better than you. Observe and watch. So that's how come I've got into conducting. And decent at it. The other bit is the business aspect of music. I didn't take any business anything. And I think where I differ from other folks is that, and I'm not totally just unique to this, is that my family are all entrepreneurs, especially on my father's side. They all own their own businesses. There's a few on my mother's side as well. So from an early age, my father put in my hands some incense to sell them. He said, go and sell these for $1. And he said, if you come back and you sell all 5 of these for $1, I'll buy you an ice cream. I came back in 10 minutes. I said, they're all done. You have any more? And my dad, that's my story with my dad. He brings up all the time. And it's like, I love it. I love that from an early age, I was taught about business and actually getting out there and doing this. So that's why for me, I understand the business element of it. And it's always ever changing. This industry is ever changing.
How did you get into this radio work, and why do you love it so much?
Well, I got into it because I was the artist in residence for All Classical Radio.
All Classical
And
Radio artist in residence does what?
so I was performing for the station. I was writing blogs. So, and then I was also the chair of the Recording Inclusivity Initiative, which is recording music of underrepresented composers that has never been recorded before. So that was a part of my big job, is to find composers, both living and posthumous. I also had an amazing team of people to help with this. I mean, we had librarians and researchers from England, from South Africa, all over the US, to find repertoire that has never been recorded, that's good, and that can be recorded. Because once it's there forever. So that was one of my big jobs, and also performing as well in different events and such. So I would be on the air for interviews, and the CEO just really loved the way I sounded. So I said, sure, give us a shot. And my focus mainly is on deck with young musicians, which I feature and interview young people. Right. And through that opportunity, I've been doing it for a few years now, I got an opportunity to be guest hosting for WQXR in New York. So that was amazing.
Yeah, that's when I said, okay, what is up? My old radio station and your old radio station. I mean, wow. Did you pinch yourself?
I did pinch myself because they gave me free reign to do whatever I want. I have 4 episodes, 1 hour each. I can do whatever I want. So I did a whole episode on James Galway in the festival, interview some of his amazing students who were a part of that. And I did a couple other organizations too that are close to me. And I was actually in New York when the first episode premiered. And I listened to it with my dad in the car, and it was a big deal. And we both just started like tearing up.
I'm sure. Cried.
Yeah, here's this kid from Brooklyn, New York, whose family are immigrants, and now he's on this huge international radio station. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal for me.
Isn't it amazing when your parents are prophetic and you say, shut up? That's never going to happen. With my listeners know, my mother used to say, you should play in the Boston Symphony. And then she passed away. And then I did 6 weeks with Seiji in the Boston Symphony at Carnegie Hall. And it was just insane. I was like, okay, Mom, fine. But you can't just go play in the Boston Symphony. And then she never knew I won the Atlanta job. So I really feel like there's some angels at work here. I was only 26 when she passed away. So I think our parents are very, very much prophetic. They have a crystal ball somewhere in the house.
They know a lot. They know a lot more than I'm willing to admit in myself, and I love that.
You have to admit it. Just go ahead and admit it, Adam, and just go to them all the time and go, okay, so now what?
I do want to ask you, because you have been one of my idols for a long time. And when you came out with that video album, it was revolutionary for the entire music field. And the fact that, as you said, there were no cuts. You did it, each one.
My study guide, you mean?
The study guide.
Yeah, well, all I did was count to 18 students and then multiply by 30 caprices. I was like, I'm not talking all that much. I'm just going to stand in front of a camera. I was doing the math. Here, watch this. So I hand it to them. I'd say, do number 1 through 4 and watch me and have a good laugh, because it was 2005. And then, they come back and I don't have to say anything.
So but when you first was thinking of that, putting that all together, how did that start? Were you just like, I want to do this?
Yes,
just figure it out.
That was it. That was exactly why. I did not want to have to repeat myself. I had 7 years of just my own thoughts with it. And I also was a scholar, I felt. I went to a school that thought that knowledge and scholarship was important. Having correct information was important, and that it could lead to happiness, basically, knowing fun things. So I wanted people to, number 1, know about Carr Gaylord, and then I needed people to play it correctly. And then, so breathe here, breathe there, breathe here, breathe there. And the only people who took me to task for that was PAN, the British Flute Society magazine. And I really didn't care because I'm part British. So it's just like, yeah, okay, thanks. People thank me for the breaths, and I'm fine with that. Then the third thing was I needed to tell my own story. So I had a night at the opera. I had the thunderstorm caprice. I had Handel with the trumpets on the River Thames, because he says a la Handel. So does anybody know that the River Thames was not fitting all these barges very well, and that he had lots of them? Yeah, I had to show everything. Now, fun thing happened. I emailed at the time, and we called people in Germany, and I said, hello, I'm doing these Carl Gaylord caprices, and you're the Carl Gaylord Society. Do you have someone who I could talk to about historical commentary? And he said, well, I'm going to turn it back to the United States. Your foremost expert is Marie Herseth. And I said, wait, how is she related to Frida Herseth, my colleague 2 doors down in my hallway? And he said, that's her sister. And by the way, their uncle was Bud Herseth, the trumpet player in Chicago. So the Herseths now are just number one in my life. Marie comes, stays with Frida, and records all of this dissertation material that she was never going to use again. And that's what you see on her history. You see Marie Herseth giving her dissertation. So the history part is so important. You have to learn about Carl Gaylord's life. He thought himself very important. Karg wasn't a great ending name. His manager made him put Eilert on the end. His colleagues laughed at him. He was bullied, for lack of a better word. I really feel like they'd giggle because he was an organist. He played lots of instruments, but he had this vision that was much more deep for single instruments. So if you noticed in the caprices, he says, I'm preparing you for hard stuff. I'm preparing you for things you might not like. Intervals that are crazy, rhythms that are weird, and they're my beautiful phrases. And so for me to kind of come into being with Carl Gaylord as one, spirit, I had to kind of get right with his uniqueness. And so it was in finding out how unique he was that I just fell in love with him. And when at that point, when you love something so much that you could talk about it all day long, other people want to hear you.
That's right.
So I just got the idea from not wanting to repeat myself, but also the trove of information. I had gladiolas from Kroger and the curtains from my dining room against the brick wall. So we took down the curtains from the dining room for some scenes and then used the brick wall for other scenes. We again snaked out the extension cord to the hallway, and I read from cue cards that my producer held up. And there were really funny outtakes. And I had a really good time. I learned to not use my hands. He'd say, Amy, put your hands down. And I learned I had a lisp. I learned I spit a lot. So anyway, that's how I did the Carl Gaylord caprices. I appreciate it that you remember.
Oh my God, 100%.
And then the Telemon in 2007.
Epic.
Sir James Galway came into my life after I won Kobe. He found me in Atlanta. He called me up on the telephone. I answered the phone. Amy, it's Jimmy. He's my old friend.
That's right. Yeah.
No last name. I said, hello. And he said, would you like to have a cheeseburger? I said, sure. So it ended up that he played a recital at Kennesaw State University that I sat front row at. So at intermission, I went back and he was gracious to accept me, and he's cleaning out his flute. And I said, so Jimmy, do you move your hand down just to play all those low notes so cleanly? Do you just, I was making a joke. Do you just move your hand over right to the key? And he said, no, I put my thumb towards my nose. I make more of a palm. And I thought, ow. At first I thought, ow. And then I thought counterintuitive. And then I thought, what is he talking about? But over the years, I've realized that the palm and the fat part of the fingers covering the keys is from his little advice at intermission of just have the palm go towards the face if you want good low notes. It's not going towards the foot joint. It's fantastic. It's a relaxation of
brilliant. Wow.
It's a relaxation of the palm. Mm-hmm. The other thing he's notorious for is scales. And so because of his notorious scales, I'm notorious about scales. And I say, Sir James says that all scales come back to visit us. They're our friends. And so they're always coming back to visit us. And so when they come back and visit us, there they are. We know them. They're super easy. We get along.
Yeah.
Everything's great. So those are like some of the things I use on a weekly basis from James Galway. And I didn't study with him. We had one meal and then he invited me to Switzerland and I went and drank wine in his home and he was so gracious. And I played the Alpenhorn.
Oh, nice. Like the long one? The really long one? Oh, that's fun. Oh,
yes, he said to me, when were you born? And I told him, and then he went and got the year that I was born out of the wine cellar.
Oh, that's spectacular.
Yeah, because I brought him all this wine. I had just been to France. I was like, here. And he said, no. Close the trunk. He goes, come on in. And Jeannie was so gracious. They are, and I'm telling you, guess who my biggest fans are? They are. They're the first to comment on any photo, video, anything. She's just so loving. Anytime I'm in the house and they're in the house, I know I can get backstage. I mean, and then I've heard him teach backstage the scales where he does 1, 2, 3, and 4 in a row in a breath. I call those the Galway scales. All right, so I've gone on enough. You tell me your tips and tricks that you remember from Jimmy.
I think one of the main ones that I think stick with me today is when it comes to articulation and where you're placing your tongue. And he was someone that I've always loved his articulation. And I studied with Thaddeus Watson, who was a dear friend of his and who also studied with Jimmy for a long time. So I got a lot of that articulation style from Thaddeus, but which really came from Sir James. And how do you place your tongue and what to think about when you're placing your tongue? So for me, it's always, I always think of a little bit of a flicker when I'm tonguing, especially in the lower register. So I use more the tip of the tongue, but also use a little bit further back when I'm tonguing the lower register so it can become really nice and full. So that's something that I've always loved from Sir James that he has kind of ingrained in me on how to tongue. The other thing is tips and tricks for me, it really comes from confidence. And can you help me with that? Can you help me with the confidence aspect of it? Because, that's something also that I learned from you at ARIA about confidence. But in terms of Sir James, it was so reassuring when he said, the first thing he said was, I am no more talented than any of you.
Right.
Right out the gate.
Right
out the gate. And what I got from that is that you have to want it. You have to want it, and you have to be able to sacrifice things, and you have to be able to work hard in this field. And what he's gotten is from hard work and from love of the industry. So, and then what I got from you specifically, Professor Porter, when you first started the class at ARIA, you made it very clear that we are here to learn. Don't come in here playing Eber Concerto at a ridiculous tempo because you can do it to show off. We're not here for that. We're here to learn.
I like to work, yeah.
I was like, this is not a place to show off. I was like, okay, great. So that kind of set the level, the level of where we all need to be mentally, is that we're here to learn. We're not here to show off. We're not here doing that type of stuff. So from there, it made me feel comfortable. And then when I played for you, I played Telemon, I think it was nine, something like that. I played for you. And I do this whole like a non-vibrato thing. And I was on the fence if I should do that for you, because I know some people don't really like that if it's not Baroque flute, on a Baroque flute. And you said, continue to do it like that. You said, you're going to have people that are not going to like it. But the way you played is so convincing, so compelling. I was like, oh my gosh. So I love what you have done for me over the years was to develop my sense of confidence, because you also did some behind the scenes auditions and helping us with that, which was brilliant. And I didn't do so well. I didn't do so well behind the scene, behind the curtain, behind the screen, excuse me. And
terrible.
You said, the only thing that lacked from you, Adam, is confidence. And I said, well, what does that mean? So what does that mean? And you weren't able to talk about it right there because everyone was around us. So, once we had some time during lunch, you were able to kind of dive into some more ideas for me and what that looks like, what that sounds like for me. And one of the things you said is to trust your voice, trust your musical voice, trust your flute voice. And you know the notes, you know it. Just play it. I was like, God, she's right. She's right. And true story, this was my interaction with you. And till this day, I am almost 40 and it still stands strong.
Okay, so you've taken that advice and you are at the forefront of a movement that is so beautiful. The Emoja, I call it a movement.
For me, Emoja is really about enlightenment and bringing folks together. And the sense of community, I think it's so important because in this industry, it's hard. It's hard to find opportunities. It's hard to come up. It's really hard. So if you can find a group of people that share the same love and interest as you, I think it's fantastic. And it doesn't limit yourself. I think some people find that organizations like Moja is limiting. And I think it's quite opposite. I mean, you're not devoting your entire life to that. You're devoting one part of that and sharing a common goal, a common bond, and then you are expanding that in your own communities.
Yeah.
So I think it's the most beautiful thing.
I want everyone to look at you as the new model, and you were inspired by Harold Jones. I knew who Harold Jones was. Of course I did. I went to Juilliard in the 80s. Of course I did. I probably met him. Right?
I think I would. Yeah, definitely. So he loved New York. He loved New York, and he was so active in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I met him a few times, but really the bulk of my information came from his sons. Actually, one of his sons live here in Portland, actually not too far from me.
Oh.
So I got a chance to meet with him and talk to him. And all three of his sons, I've had so much information was given to me from them about their father. One of his sons actually wrote an autobiography about his own father. And one of my big questions was, how do you make it in this field and do all these things and you have a wife and 3 kids? How does that work? And they were giving me their perspective. And also I talked to some other folks who were part of his ensemble who are still around and got their perspective on him. So right now I'm just overwhelmed with so much information on who he was as a person and as a leader. And it's shaping the way I think and it's shaping the way how I lead. And then not just him, you as well. You as well. Sir James as well. Miss Robeson. Paula Robeson has been someone that if I didn't get into her studio, I was going to quit the whole thing. And she told me, she said, Adam, it's a long shot. There's a lot of different things involved to enrollment. It's a long shot. And then when I got in, those 2 years were really what set in stone for me that this is what I need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because my time with Tara Helen O'Connor was marvelous. I was young. I was 18, so there was a lot of things that she really wanted to kind of get the fundamentals right. And then by the time I got to Paula, she wanted to open up what was here.
Yes.
Open up what was here. But how do you do that in a way that can attract an audience? How do you do that? How do you bring that alive from here into the music? So she really delved into that for me, and it was marvelous. So I owe her so much.
She brings us Moise, really.
Amen to that. Right now in my life, things are really on the up, and I love that. And it's taken a long time, and I'm not done. There's still a lot of work to be done. But what I've realized is that I'm not limited to one thing. I am not just flute player. I'm not just this. I'm not just that. I can do a lot of different things. We can do a lot of different things, and we get so worried to step out of what we know well and what we're comfortable with. But for me, I find the growth in myself when I take myself out of my comfort. I take myself out of what I am comfortable doing. And for me, one of the big things that I wanted to do that really helped to bring me out of my shell was the radio hosting.
Yeah.
I really hated my voice for a very long time. So to do something like that is more healing for me, for little Adam, is more healing for little Adam. So I'm always looking for the next thing where I can push myself and elevate myself as a human being.
Well, it will be shown to you. You won't go looking for it. Because when you have plans, the universe laughs.
Oh, right. Yeah. Who's really in control?
Yeah. So I just cannot wait to watch you continue to blossom. Adam Eccleston, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being on PorterFlute Pod.
Thank you so much, Ms. Porter. Thank you.
Thank you for being in PorterFlute Pod, and thank you, Izzy and Ella, for helping me produce Season 7. If you enjoy our show and you want to review us and rate us, go to Apple Podcasts. You can find our show at PorterFlute.com. And you can find me at amyporter.com and on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube. I'm PorterFlute. Thanks for being in PorterFlute Pod. I'm so grateful for you.